Being creative. That's what's coming up on The Art of Bombing, episode 134.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. Dan Bublitz Jr. here with you as always. It is Tuesday, and I hope everybody is having a fantastic week thus far. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Art of Bombing. And today was a good day to tune in because I have a fantastic guest. He is a great comedian and an even better human. Today, my guest is Zoltan Comedy, my good pal from San Diego, and we had a great conversation about a lot of things. We did some catching up, and I'm very excited to share this conversation with you. But before we do that, let's take care of the announcements. It is Tuesday. That means tonight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on the Facebook page, the Art of Bombing Facebook page, and the Art of Bombing YouTube page, you can tune in live for the interactive joke workshop show called Renewed, where I'm sitting down with another comedian, and we're going back and forth and working on bits, and people that are viewing the show get to tune in and make suggestions as well. It is a fun show. And tonight, my guest is Alicia Rain. You might remember her from a previous episode of The Art of Bombing. So we're going to do a little joke workshopping live, and that is at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, Wednesday at 7 p.m., if you ain't got nothing to do, I'm going to be doing a bonus Art of Bombing Between Bombs live Q&A. If you're a big fan of the show and you've listened to all the episodes, you're familiar with the little mini episodes that I do once in a while called Between Bombs. I'm going to do a live Q&A. That means anybody that wants to ask questions about comedy-related stuff and pick my brain about comedy and the industry and so on and so forth, there's your time to do it. It'll be a fun time. That'll be at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, that's on Facebook Live on the old Art of Bombing Facebook page and the YouTube page. So if you ain't got nothing to do, tune in to that. Now, another big announcement. I'm going to save this announcement for last, actually. I'm going to do this one first. Saturday, got my live streaming Exposed show. It is a virtual storytelling show, Exposed, where performers from across the country stream with me, and we do stories based on a theme. And it's been a great show. That's on Saturday at 8 p.m. And I've been doing that every Saturday, actually, and I'll probably keep doing it every Saturday. So tune into that. That's another free streaming type show. Now, the final announcement before we get into this great conversation today is that I have so many fantastic conversations in the bank. I've decided to release the podcast twice a week. That's right, 2 times a week. You get to hear the Art of Bombing podcast. Starting Friday, I will be releasing 2 episodes a week for the time being. I don't know if this is permanent, but right now I have the conversations and the time to do this. So I'm going to, because I don't want to be sitting on these great conversations for so long that they become irrelevant. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you've subscribed to the podcast so you don't miss an upcoming episode. Please give us a rating and a 5-star review. That would be fantastic. Make sure you recommend the podcast to somebody that you think might like this podcast. It helps us out. And finally, if you need anything else for the Art of Bombing, go check out the website, artofbombingpod.com, full of all the previous episodes. Get caught up. You've got time to do it. So binge it. This is a binge-worthy podcast. At least I think it is. All right. Now that we've taken care of the business, let's get into this conversation with the great comedian Zoltan. Enjoy.
Okay, so when was the last time you were on stage?
March 13th.
Oh, I think we might have the same date.
Was when, yeah, because that was they, the stuff started to kind of unravel right about then.
Yeah.
And a lot of the public gatherings and things like that were getting canceled, and businesses were canceling that kind of stuff. But the actual shelter in place issued by the governor didn't go into effect until, I think, Monday the 30th or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't know that date in California either. To me, it all stopped when the comedy club shut down.
Exactly. That's when I couldn't do live shows anymore, that's when the world was over.
Yeah. That's when we started a very regimented drug and alcohol program to help me keep me sane during this downtime.
Yeah. I was thinking about that.
This is like the time to experiment.
Right?
On all platforms. Like as comedians, we're experimenting on different platforms. Like we're doing podcasts like this. People are trying sketches. We're trying different things since we can't do live stand-up. But even for regular people, I mean, this is the time to experiment with, like, go start painting, start doing master class, start trying different drugs, and start making wine start fermenting wine in your backyard. I don't know how it's done, but try it out. You have nothing to lose. I mean, unless you still have work to go to. But if you're out of work like me, try all this stuff, consequence free.
Yeah, no, I'm right there. Oh,
like,
absolutely.
I'm not telling people to go do meth or smoke crack.
Just try it. Don't get addicted. Just try it.
Your hippie friend in yoga pants that's like, hey, you got to try microdosing on shrooms. And you're like, I have a flight tomorrow. I can't be messing around with food right now. But now you're like, dude, I don't think I have a flight for the rest of the year. So, yeah, what's up with
let's do it.
Shrooms? Yeah, let's try it out.
That's funny. I've actually been thinking about that, about doing that. Trying shrooms, actually. That's something I still
haven't tried it. I've talked about it. I have like capsules of microdosing. I'm still scared to do them, but they're in my fridge. Yeah.
You got them. Well, hey, there you go. Yeah, I haven't even got that far. But I've thought about it. Now that I'm getting older, I'm like, you know what? I've never really did any hard drugs in my life. And I don't want to, like, I'm not like, I don't want to go do cocaine and get all crazy. But I was like, doing a hallucinogen might be fun just to try once, once or twice.
When I'm recommending drugs to people, I'm more thinking like the psychedelics. I don't think this is the time to be trying cocaine. I mean, I guess it is consequence free, but like everything you would do to have fun with cocaine is all closed. You can't go
right.
You can't run to Vegas. I don't know. There's no nightclub. And I've never done cocaine, but it just seems like the people that are into that world, like all the stuff that goes along with that drug is closed right now. So maybe wait on that. But I was thinking like go sit in the woods and trip on some shrooms. I feel like that's totally acceptable right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. My stupid thing, I'm trying to log in because I have some other things that I use. I had to change. Oh, fuck it. This is not working. Anyway.
Technical difficulties. What do you got over there? You trying to play some intro music or something?
No, not intro music. No, I have. I forgot that I changed my password on my Google account, so I have my little Chrome. What is it? My little tablet that I use because I have some standard questions that I like to ask on this. So I just have like my list of questions or whatever. But I forgot I changed my password, and now everything's being all a pain in the ass. So. That's okay.
If you don't remember the password, you're screwed. Like we were trying to break into my friend's iPad. That was hers.
Yep.
It was her iPad. She just forgot the 4-digit code, and you gotta jump through hoops to open that thing back up.
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yep. That's okay. I have it on my computer too, so I'm not that lost. I don't need the tablet, so we're good. It's there. I'm just frustrated because I forgot I changed the password this morning.
Yeah.
And so now, in order to get into there, I have to change a bunch of shit. Just a pain in the ass. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, though. This would be the time to do, and that's what I've been trying to do. It's got me, I did more writing in this time. A lot of comedians are like, well, what's the point of writing? We can't go perform any jokes or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't know. But I've been inspired to write more.
That's good. It's all about killing time.
That's exactly what it is.
Trying to kill time. So like, I don't make it a point to sit down and write, but when something comes in my head, which by the way, when stand-up was normal, that's not how I wrote anyway. But if something comes to mind, I definitely jot it into my phone. I have like, I don't know, 5 or 6 premises for whenever we're allowed to do stand up again. You know, I can try them out. They're in there. They're not, you know.
Yep, ready to go.
You're just killing time, man.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, we were talking about this kind of before we started recording, that trying other endeavors, this is the perfect time for that. If there's a lot of comics that are always like, oh yeah, I got this project I want to do. I just don't have time to do it or whatever. I'm always on the road. I just there's no excuse now.
Yeah.
We're all stuck at home.
Yeah. This is the time you find out that you're not that creative. Like this is, I feel like that's what stand-ups are finding out right now. You're like, yeah, I love doing stand-up and that's my living, but I think I'd be a really good screenwriter, or I want to make my own YouTube. I just don't have time because I travel so much, and now we have the time, and then we're just sitting there going, I guess I'm not that creative. I guess my talent is really just stand-up, and everything else is really a watered-down version of what I'm able to do on a stage.
Yep, that seems about right too.
Yeah.
I definitely see that. I see that a lot because there's a lot of too. Because that's the thing too with where we're at. You either have to go with how times are changing, or you're going to get left behind. And a lot of people have been on the fence about doing digital or virtual shows. Like on Zoom or streaming stuff, because you don't quite get the same interaction that you do in a live audience.
Right.
And virtual comedy will never replace live comedy. That's just how it is. But the problem is the future is changing, and things are changing, and you either got to go with it or you're going to get left behind. And we're at that point where it's time you have to have other backup plans. Because
it's not fun. I said this the other day on my podcast. I was like, if stand-up was always virtual shows, I would have never started.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I would have just been like, oh, I guess I'm just gonna keep working at this warehouse and driving a forklift. But I've been turning down virtual shows just because, and I'm not knocking comics that are doing them at all. Go do it. I don't care. Thing. This is the time to experiment. Go do it. I just feel like I would really suck at it because I'm like. I feel like those Zoom shows would be perfect for someone who's like a shorter comic, like kind of more set up punch, not really one-liner, but maybe set up punch, maybe a little alty, I guess. And I'm more, I tell stories, I'm long-winded, and I just feel like I would bomb my ass off on one of those things. And I'm just being a coward, and I don't even want to try. I've been telling myself I want to watch one. I want to watch one and then maybe go do one, but I just like the idea of it. I don't know.
Yeah. I will say I've did a few shows like on different types of platforms too. And for me, it's been fun, but at the same time, it's super awkward. It's not, that's why I say it's definitely not the same, but I will say like doing a Zoom show, if it's ran good, it can be fun. It'll never replace live stand-up, but you still get laughter. You hear people laughing, and so there's that. So you're still getting some of that instant gratification from your jokes and stuff. But it's still awkward to be sitting here just like we are right now, telling jokes at a bunch of faces at the top of my screen.
Yeah. The closest thing I've done is I got invited. I don't know if you knew this, but I did a couple cat conventions last year.
Oh yeah, I've been keeping up on you.
Yeah. I haven't seen each other in a while, but I did 2 cat conventions where I did a live stand-up, and then they tried a virtual cat convention, which was essentially it was a Zoom show with different vendors and cat people, and they asked me to do it, and I was like, I'll do it, but you can't say that I'm doing stand-up, because what I'm going to do is sit on my couch with my cat, and then we'll do like a virtual meet and greet thing. That's what I told them to call it. And that's what I did. And I had fun doing that, because what I did is I just turned everyone's mics on, and I just did crowd work. Like All I did was talk to people. Like, it wasn't stand-up at all. I told 0 jokes. I made people laugh by talking, but it wasn't stand-up. It wasn't even crowd work. I was just, like, holding my cat, talking to strangers on a Zoom meeting, and I guess we did the show. So that's fun, but I wouldn't go do, like, regular stand-up. I don't know. I'm just such an old man, you know?
I feel you.
The way it was, they're just, I guess, don't do it then.
Yep. Yeah. That's like I said, it's you either move with the times or you get left behind. And Zoltan's going to get left behind.
I'm getting left. If this is what stand-up is, I'm tendering my resignation. I'm out. And once again, no judgment to anyone who's doing it. It's just not for me. And I guess I'm going to work on becoming a podcaster. And then which I've always had the podcast. But I guess I would just focus all my attention on that like I have been over the last however long this has been going on. I've lost track of time. I'm coming up on 2 months now.
Yeah, it's getting up there. Yeah, it's crazy times. With that, do you feel like now that you've been devoting more time to like your podcast and stuff, has your listenership improved, do you feel like? Or do you think it's stayed about the same?
My downloads on iTunes are about the same, but I've noticed an uptick on like social, like people watching videos on Instagram and Facebook because they're stuck at home.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So,
yep.
Like YouTube has gone up, Instagram and Facebook have gone up, but like direct downloads haven't gone up. I think a lot of people that were into my stand-up, I never really pushed my podcast that much, other than telling them, "Hey, I have one and I put episodes up every week." So we don't get a lot. We get like 1,000 downloads a week. It's nothing crazy. But a lot more people are, I think, into them on YouTube and watching clips.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, especially now, because even me, as somebody that I listen to a lot of podcasts, or I did, like big fan of a lot of different podcasts. And since I've been home, I don't listen to podcasts as much.
Yeah, because I would normally listen to podcasts when I was flying.
Yep, flying, driving.
Yeah, traveling, When
you're
killing time in between and you're like, I can't listen to music for 9 hours. I'm going to start hating music. So you start listening to talk and stuff. And yeah, I'm pretty much down to like one podcast that I really listen to, and it's a pro wrestling one. It's Jim Cornette Experience podcast. That's what I like listening to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then every once in a while I'll pop in a Joe Rogan, like when he interviews Elon Musk. But for the most part, I don't listen to as nearly as many podcasts as I was.
Yeah, I've only been keeping up on a few, and that I listen to regularly. I keep downloading them. I just keep joking. I'm like, I'm just going to have to go on one really long road trip to get caught up and on the podcast now. Just get in my car and drive until I'm out.
Yeah, that's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah. It's funny, too, that I'm glad we were able to set this up today. But the funny thing is, we should be having lunch together today in person. Because I was actually supposed to be in San Diego.
I totally forgot about that. Like, once this thing happened, all my plans got canceled. But every once in a while, I'll get an alert on my, like, Google Calendar.
Uh-huh.
Like, hey, you're supposed to be – like, I got one. Like, hey, you're supposed to be in Utah this weekend. I'm like, yeah, that got canceled, you dummy. And then it came up, you're like, hey, you have lunch with Dan. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we were supposed to – Yeah, we're doing a virtual lunch, so this is just
there we go.
we're a lot further than 6 feet apart.
Yeah, we're definitely obeying the rules today.
I actually got tested have you been tested?
I have not. No.
I got tested over the weekend because my girl I'm dating, whatever terms are, she had like 1 day of like a fever and the shakes. So we went and got tested, and it's not fun. Like they stuck in my nose. It actually hurt.
Oh, damn.
Whirled it. They didn't hurt her, but I got a different lady and she hurt me. It turns out I haven't gotten my results back yet, but she has, and she doesn't have it. So I'm assuming I don't.
Yeah, you're probably good then.
Very
Yeah.
good. But,
I've done a good job at avoiding people the best.
Right.
This is one thing I'm learning about this experience is that I'm okay with being a hermit. I have a hell of a time going out even for necessities. I'm like, oh fuck, I got to go to the store today. Like,
yeah.
and it's becoming a real stress just to go out and be around people.
And you know what? I would have said the same thing about myself before this started. I would before this started, if you would have asked me like, hey, do you like hanging out, or you kind of, type B personality, keep to yourself, blah, blah, blah. I would have said that. I would have been like, yeah, when I go travel to a place, I'm cool staying in my hotel room, maybe exploring a little on my own, but I don't need to be around people all the time. I don't even want to be. And then when this thing started, I was like, oh my God, I miss people.
Yeah.
Remember how much like before this started, it was like all these, like a really popular tweet would be like, I hate people. People suck. People are the worst. And people would be like, yeah, man, people do suck. People are the worst. And then now I'm just like, I miss people. I miss all these people that I hated, apparently. I guess I am a social creature.
Yeah, we all kind of are. We just don't realize it, I suppose. Yeah, I was perfectly content. I think my thing is because I'm kind of the same way. It was kind of the same way before too. But I think for me, a lot of it is I got a lot of that social interaction and comedy and stuff. And so if I wasn't doing comedy, being at home was fine because I have a comfortable home life now. Where it's like I don't mind being at home. I got my dogs, my cat, my lady. It's good. We got our house. It's homey and all that. So it's like I don't need to go out all the time. But now, seeing how dumb people are, and there's a lot of dumb people, and I'm sorry if you're listening, people, and you think I'm talking about you.
Yeah.
But I probably am. And the more I go out and see some of the stupidity, I'm just like, I can't take it. I'm going to be the guy standing out on my front lawn chasing people out of here. Before too long.
You don't even have to go outside to see dumb people. They broadcast the protests.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's ridiculous.
You can watch it. They'll live stream it right to your Zoom account. They're like, oh, look, those are all the people protesting. Which I get why they're protesting. I don't want to be stuck in here either. I live in a studio apartment. Like this is a cool place to be if you're leaving tomorrow. This is a perfect place to come home after a week's trip of doing comedy, being here for a day or two, and then leaving again. But being here 2 months straight, you're like, man, this place is tiny. All right. I sit there, I sit here, I poop there, I eat there. And that's my place. And I can't do stand-up, so I can't even leave, really. And then I miss boxing. I fell in love with boxing over the last couple of years, so I bought a heavy bag online and I hung it outside. And I just like kind of turned this place into a jail cell. What I've done.
I shouldn't laugh at that. But that was so funny.
That's what I just turned it into an hour of yard time. That's what I do. I give myself an hour of yard time. I get a workout in. I got some books allotted by the library, and then my cellmate is very furry, and she makes me need to vacuum the couch.
She's becoming quite the little star too on the internet.
Oh, she's more famous than I am. I'm not famous at all. She's famous, and then they put up with my stand-up because they know I'll eventually talk about her.
Yeah, they're like, we're just waiting to hear about the cat.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this is who I keep referencing.
There you go. Oh, the cute little kitty. That video you posted the other day was so funny. Where you're talking to her about doing stand-up or doing something online, then just yawned and dropped.
Yeah, she just fell. Yeah, she's like, I don't care. That was us getting ready for the cat convention.
Oh, that's right. That's so funny. Oh
so
my god!
I had to. My set. The time we had to be on camera was an hour, and I'm like, what the hell am I going to do for an hour? So I was like trying to think of stories that I could tell that wouldn't be too jokey or whatever. That could just be conversational. And I was really nervous to do it, but we got through it.
That's good. Well, life and times. But let's get into the meat of this, and let's talk about a story, or let you tell a story about a time where you felt like you bombed really bad, or it was a really bad show.
Oh, I have a ton of them. The ones that are really soul sucking and stick with me are They all come from colleges. Like, have you ever performed at a college? Like down to like
I did a couple, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's different kinds. Like I remember in San Diego, you might have done a couple of these. They used to do a show at UCSD at a bar called Porter's Pub, and I've performed there a few times. Different people would book it. It was always fine. I don't think it was ever great, but it was never bad either. It was always just fine. But colleges, when you get booked through like doing a NACA event, can be really hit or miss. And the misses, like the ones that are really bad, those are the ones like you'll remember on your deathbed. You'll be like, oh, I kind of want to live. And then I'll remember me bombing at Penn State Harrisburg going, no, this is for the best. I'm glad I'm dying. Because I do, like, Penn State Harrisburg was my biggest bomb. And I still, one day I'm going to go back and burn the school down. That's how bad
You're going to burn the proof. You're like, if I burn the school down, I didn't bomb here.
Yeah, they're going to have to build something over it. It's going to be a hotel or something. But I didn't bomb here. I bombed at the location that used to be here before all this gasoline. But what happened was, so I was on my college tour, and the night before Penn State Harrisburg, I was at William Jefferson College outside of Pittsburgh. And I showed up. It was a small room, and there was like 10 students there, which 10 students in a small room, you can make a show happen there. That's plenty. And the girl who was in charge of that one, she's like, hey, I think like 10 or 20 more people are coming. Can we wait a few more minutes until they show up? And I was like, sure. We waited the 10 minutes. Those people didn't show up, and the people that were there left. So now it's just empty. And then she goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Hands me my check, and she goes, I guess there's no show. And I remember looking at her going, never apologize for this. Like, you just handed me a college, which, by the way, colleges pay really well. She handed me a substantial check, and then I just went back to the Courtyard Marriott and had dinner and drinks. I'm like, this is great. Never apologize for this. So the next day I wake up and drive to Harrisburg for the next college, and I walk into a similar situation. It's like a cafeteria. There's nobody there. They have like a stage off to the side with a projection of a poster of me with my name misspelled. And I walk in and I see the situation. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to get another check and I'm going to leave. This is wonderful. And the girl who's in charge of that show just looks at me and goes, well, we paid you. And I was like, what does that mean? She goes, well, go up there and do comedy. And I'm like, there's nobody here. And she's like, well, there's some students over there. And she pointed like a quarter mile away. There's like,
Jesus.
There's like 3 students in a corner trying to like study. Like, cause this cafeteria was big. It was a big ass cafe. And they're like way over there. So I go on stage and I'm like, I'm begging them to come up to the front. I'm like, please stop following your dreams and like listen to me for an hour. Stop trying to be a doctor or whatever you're trying to be. Come listen to me. And they did. I lied. I said there was going to be a prize at the end. There's no prize. The prize is me leaving with my dignity. Situation. And so anyway, these 3 students come and sit in the front. And it's still horrible, but I'm trying to do comedy. And 15 minutes in, this one student gets up to leave. And as he's like pushing the double doors open, I jokingly, I'm like, I got to say something. So I was like, oh man, you're leaving? Was it the cat jokes? And he just looked at me as he's opening the doors and he goes, I just can't. And then he walked through the doors.
Jesus.
And I still had 45 more minutes to do in front of the 2 students left. I could have left with the piece of my soul. Like, I still have bad dreams about just him opening the doors like a child looking at me going, I just can't. And then him walking out.
Oh my God. Wow. That's brutal.
Penn State Harrisburg.
Oh my God. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some like bad shows that should have been terrible that actually weren't that bad. I did a school north of Detroit. It was in Pontiac, Michigan, and that was the only reason it was cool. I actually did this school twice. The first time because the Pontiac Silverdome was the exit was right next to the school. So being a huge wrestling fan, that's where Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant wrestled in WrestleMania 3 back in '87 or whatever. So like I would take both times I performed, I like took pictures of the stadium. I think it's torn down now, but they booked me for the show, and the first time I showed up, they didn't tell me that the show was outdoors. And they didn't tell me that I was opening for a band. So I show up to this large field, there's a stage, and then there's a spotlight. Where the actual spotlight is a legit 50 yards from the stage. And there's 3 students just sitting crisscross applesauce by the spotlight, which is 50 yards away from the stage. That was the audience. And
wow.
I remember I took a picture of it, and I'm like, you're about to make me go up there. Like, yeah, you're going to go do an hour, and then you're going to open for this band that's going to do an hour. And I'm like, where is everybody? And they're like, oh, they're going to come. But they set up all this pizza and food even behind the spotlight. So even further than 50 yards away was a giant table of pizza, so there's some more students hanging out there. So I begged the girl who was introducing me, and I'm like, hey, can you just tell them to come sit up front? If they sit up front, there's a prize. That was my go-to. You lie about a prize, and then there's no prize. They don't remember what was said an hour ago, you know? So like 10 students come and sit in a field while I'm on stage, and I just did crowd work for an hour. And I didn't know the show was outside, and it was in the fall, so I didn't bring a jacket, so I'm freezing. And then a student gave me his hoodie. So, like, I'm wearing the student's hoodie, and I'm just doing crowd work. And it actually went not that bad. And then the band went up, and a lot of people left, actually. Like, I thought the band would kill it, because you can just play music. Yeah. People are like, hell yeah, music. My crowd work actually did better than the band, which was a good band. It wasn't on the band, but like people were like petered out after that. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing how like event planners don't know what, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't know how to plan events, you know, like there's a lot of little things that you wouldn't think about as an event planner, like putting the food way in the back path, you know, because that's something that's going to draw the people away from the actual show, you know, things like that.
Right, or performing while people are eating. Like if it's a banquet, and then they always go, hey, we're going to serve the food, then you're going to go on. It's like, no, serve the food, let them eat, and then I'll go on. Because I did one of those where I was just supposed to do a 15-minute set or a 30-minute set. It was shorter. And I went up, and everyone was eating, so I just ate shit. And then I sat down all red-faced, and the guy who booked me a few minutes later went back up and goes, hey, I noticed everyone was eating, and now you guys are done. What if we have Zoltan come back up and do another half hour? And I was like, what? Like, they didn't run that by me. And then I went back up and then had a better set with, like, different material, just people were paying attention. And
you gotta get it, a redo. You gotta hit the reset button.
Yeah, but I wasn't ready. And then, so like right when they bring you up, you know, like you're in your head, you're like, well, I do have another 30 minutes, but I wasn't ready. So now I'm trying to remember what the hell I stammered through, 20 minutes ago, and not repeat that, and then try to do some other stuff, but then also keep it clean because it was like a clean event or whatever. I don't know. I just remember John Carney was there, the old kicker for the Chargers, and I tried to like do some crowd work with him, and he was not into it. And then everyone just stared at me. And then I was like, okay, John Carney doesn't want to talk. And then,
that's like the worst crowd work when you like try to address somebody and they want nothing to do with you at all. And it doesn't matter if they're, a famous person or not. Any person in the audience, when you try to address them and they're just like, I'm not having this. And oh my God.
When they heckle you and then you're like, all right, I guess I got to talk to you. And then when you like try talking to them and asking them some questions, like, just do your show. And you're like, I tried to. I was trying to do my show, but your fat face couldn't shut up. So now I'm talking to you, and now you don't want to talk to me. Stop ruining the show. All right.
You bastards.
Yeah.
The bumming and bombing, that dreadful feeling after you bomb, how long, you've been doing comedy for a while, so I know this has changed over the years, I'm sure, but like when you started, how long did that feeling last as opposed to, now?
All day.
All day?
Yeah, until I would usually feel bad about a bomb until like I finally had a good set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think the last time I truly atom bombed was late last year. I was on a cruise ship, and this cruise ship, I didn't know it, but they were coming back from the UK. So all of the audience was British. I don't know if you ever performed in front of British people, but they suck. They're the worst audiences. And as soon as I got on the ship, they warned me. They're like, listen, man, these Brits aren't giving anybody anything. So just go out there and do your thing. And I had performed in Edinburgh. I did the Fringe Festival. And that's a whole month long of like, you're not just performing in front of like people from the United Kingdom. There's people from all over the world that go to the Fringe. But it's mostly people from the UK. And I remember that first week I ate shit at the festival. Because they like it different. The UK crowds, they're more into wordiness and dry. They don't respond to being quirky and over the top, like being animated. That's not really what they're more into the wordiness of it. So it took me a week over in Edinburgh to like get my pacing down to something that they liked, and then the rest of the month went well. But I didn't have that luxury when I'm on this cruise ship. I just had 2 shows. I had one on the first night that I came on, and then I had one 2 nights later. And the first night I went on was so bad. Like, they gave me nothing. And it's a big theater on this dumb cruise ship. So I don't know, there's like 1,000 people in there, maybe 700 people in there. It's a lot of people. And it's formal nights, so they're all in like tuxedos and gowns. And I'm just bombing, just dry mouth, atom bombing. And the only laugh that I actually got an applause break. And it was about 10 minutes into my half-hour set. I go, I think this is so weird because you guys are all wearing like tuxedos. You guys are all dressed like you just came from a funeral and now you're watching another one. And that got like a giant applause break. And then like an idiot in my head, I'm like, nice, I got him. And then I went... It got a huge laugh and a big applause break, and then I'm like, cool, maybe this is where I turned the set around, went right back to bombing. Like, I tried another joke, and they're like, no, we still hate your material. God awful. And then I just died, and then I was like, you're stuck on it. This is also the bad thing when you bomb on a ship. You're on the ship with the people. So, like, you don't want to go outside. You just want to order room service and don't even care. But anytime I stepped outside, people would come up to me and they're like, hey, I had multiple people tell me this. Like, we enjoyed your show. We're just British. And we don't like to laugh out loud, but we truly enjoyed your performance. And I'm like, you guys suck then. Like, it's not a good excuse that we're British. Like, yeah, I get it. You don't get sun and you're cold and you enjoy tea. Nobody likes tea. But be better. Like, be better. And then so I almost took it as a personal challenge. I'm like, I'm going to get these people on this next show. And I prepared, and I went up with all this piss and vinegar, and then still bombed. I bombed twice. Once going in there going, all right, they're not going to give you anything, but be optimistic. And the second time, truly determined to win these people over, bombed again. So I hated performing for the Brits. It doesn't mean I won't go perform in the UK. I will, because I want to win. But I already hated performing on cruise ships, but performing on a cruise ship with Brits as your audience, you're like, dude, just let me hang myself. Like, at least, give me something sturdy enough in my cabin to hang myself with,
So I don't have to go do the second performance.
Yeah, the window doesn't even open. I can't even jump off the ship. Like, this sucks.
Oh man, when you have a set like that, granted, there's a lot of factors in there. You've got the cultural differences and things like that
Sure.
come into play. But how do you analyze a set like that to try to figure out what went wrong and to correct it in the future? So, like, for example, from that first show to the second show, granted, you knew they were kind of a little bit about their culture, but what other things did you try to do to try to prevent it from happening again?
The worst thing about bombing is not learning anything from it. And bombing in front of those 2 audiences on that cruise ship, I still to this day sometimes look back at those sets and go, I don't know what I could have done different. I honestly don't know, if anything, because I can't trash on myself for a half hour, because I tried that the second night. So it's not like I didn't try to adjust, I was like, all right, like, here's my mentality. If I do a corporate event or a college or any time it's a tough audience, I know how to massage them, or I know what's worked in the past about massaging them and into being decent. what I start doing is I start going and I call out the situation, make fun of the situation. I try not to be too self-deprecating unless it's really late in the show and I'm about to be done anyway, because I don't want to lose their respect too early. And then I'll start doing crowd work, a little bit of crowd work, get them with the laugh. Cool. Let me get back into material. Depending on how that goes, maybe back to material or back to some more crowd work. And you just go crowd work material until your time is up. And hopefully you got them involved enough to where they were entertained, they listened to some of your jokes, and then you peppered your way through it. But none of that crap worked in front of these Brits on the high seas. They just sucked. Like, I don't think my best performance could have figured it out. Like, I tried to get out of doing the second show. I'm like, I went to the theater director and I'm like, what are we doing for these people? Like, they don't want it. I definitely don't want to do it. Why don't you just play my special that's on YouTube and they can share it back. They can don't. Why do I have to be up there and feeling like I want to kill myself when you can just play a video of me doing well, and then maybe they'll enjoy that, and then I don't have to feel like I want to jump off this ship. You know, like my worst bombs, I don't know what I would have done different. Penn State Harrisburg, there's 3 students. One of them left 15 minutes in. I don't know how to, like, you could put me in that now. That was 5 years ago. I'm a better comic now than I was 5 years ago. Still would have eaten shit. That cruise ship situation, I'm pretty sure you could take me as a comic 10 years from now, when hopefully I would be better if stand-up's ever allowed again. Put me in that same situation, we'll still eat my shorts in that entire situation. Mm-hmm. It's just, sometimes it's bad. I mean, in my younger days, I would learn about, like, yeah, don't come off so aggressive if someone heckles, because now you're coming off like a dick immediately. So you learn little things. But, like, my bombs more recently, the most frustrating part is not learning what I could have done different.
And not being able to figure out what would have happened. Yeah. Well, and I feel like there's just some scenarios where there's nothing to gain out of it. You're just you could put any comic in that situation and they're not going to come out good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
That's what I thought. I was like, when I was on that cruise ship, I was like, dude, Chris Rock could have came out here. I want to see him kill this. Like, he probably would have, because he's an amazing comedian. But I still want to see it, is my point.
Yeah, right? So you can watch it and take notes.
I just remembered this one, talking about bad shows. One of my worst bombs was at a car dealership at 1 p.m.
Everything about that sentence sounds horrible.
Yeah. And they picked me. They wanted me specifically. They didn't want any comic. They reached out to my college agent at the time, because I think I had her contact on my website or whatever. And she reached out to me. She's like, hey, there's a car dealership 10 minutes from your house, and they're doing a company employee appreciation lunch at 1 p.m, and they want you to go perform at the dealership. And I said, I don't want to do that. And she goes, okay. And then she told them no, and then they came back and raised the money. And then I still said no. I'm like, no, I still can't do it. I'm flying up to the Bay Area that day. I have a flight. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And then they raise the money again. And then they go, we'll personally drive you to the airport afterwards so you can make your flight. And I was like, so now the money it's rent money and then some, to give you an idea. Like, it's pretty good. And I'm like, all right, just go bomb for an hour, take the dumb check, and then go fly and go do your show in the Bay Area that night. What are you doing turning down this kind of money? So I went and did it. It was horrible. I was actually performing in the showroom. I bombed in front of a Toyota Yaris. That's what I bombed in front of. And it was a classic, like, comedian corporate bomb story. So right before I go on stage, the president of the dealership goes up, and he brings up this young lady that apparently needed a kidney 5 years ago. And the whole dealership, everyone, like, donated a small percentage of their paycheck for a couple of years so she could afford this kidney surgery that she needed, or transplant, or whatever the hell she needed. And then she gave this speech that said, thanks to you guys donating, I'm now 100% better. And I just got accepted to go to UCLA, and I'm going to go there on some blah, blah, blah degree. She starts crying. Everybody's crying. All right.
Oh, God.
Standing ovation. I'm next. I'm following that. And then the guy who booked me, he's like wiping tears, and I'm not crying. I'm terrified I'm crying for a different reason. I'm crying because I'm about to follow this. And I turned to the guy who booked me at the dealership, and I go, dude, I'm about to bomb. And he goes, huh? No, you're going to do great. I'm like, no, I guarantee you I'm about to eat shit. You just had the whole place crying. And then now me? And then so I went up there, and I bombed from the word go all the way to the end. And while I'm bombing, they shut down the entire dealership for this 1 hour or hour and a half company employee appreciation thing. While I'm bombing in a well-lit showroom at 1 p.m., every few minutes or so, a customer would come up and shake the double doors. Trying to get in. He's like right over here. He's like over my shoulder. Like I'm bombing here, but over my shoulder every few minutes someone would come rattle the doors trying to get in, and I would yell at them. I don't even know if they could hear me through the glass, but in my microphone, I'm like, you got to come back later. They shut down the dealership so I could embarrass myself. And then I would go back to bombing. Dude, this is how I opened my set, and I thought this would get a laugh. I was like, hey, thanks for having me, blah, blah. And then I said something like, hey, let's be honest. The dealership shut down. It's just me and you guys. There's no customers here. Be straight up with me. Leasing is a sucker's game, isn't it? And then just, you could have heard a pin drop. Like, no, like, everyone was like, what? And I'm like, come on, it's a sucker's game. $10,000 for 2 years on a car you don't own, but you're responsible for. That's what you want to sell people because they're stupid, right? And then nothing. And I was like, all right. I thought that was going to break the ice after the whole crying situation. So they hated me immediately. The only laugh that I got for an entire hour was I made fun of VIN numbers because I used to work at a mechanic shop. And by the way, the whole audience was like, all the salesmen were over here, all the finance people were here, all the mechanics were over here. So it was all these different class of people that don't even like each other, and I got to entertain all of them. And I asked like the parts department, I go, why is it when I call for a part, you guys don't even care about the year, make, model? All you care about is VIN numbers. Place explodes, and just like the cruise ship thing, I'm like, this is where I turn the set around. No, I went right back to bombing after that because I don't have an hour on VIN numbers, okay? That was just like one thing that came out, and then they're looking at me like, oh, maybe he's going to turn his set around. I'm like, well, that's all the VIN number jokes that I have. I'm back to me, and I just go back to eating shit. The only good thing I said at the end that made me feel good is, how did I word it? I pretty much worded it in a way. I wish I could remember the exact quote, but I said, well, after this, I got to go fly to the Bay Area to do a show. And I know this was weird, but we should all take solace in knowing, whatever that word is, and we're all exactly where we're supposed to be. And then they laughed because they realized I was making fun of myself, and then they stopped laughing because they realized I was also talking about them. It was just one last, it was a way for me to get a laugh until they realized I was also talking about them, and it was a flip off, and then I left. And then that guy who booked me didn't talk to me as he took me to the airport. We just sat in silence.
I was actually going to ask, I was like, so did they actually give you the ride afterwards? Or were they like, well, buddy, you're going to have to get your own way?
Yeah, dude, I'll be honest, afterwards, I didn't want the ride. The guy who booked me, he's like, yeah, I'm like, you don't know anything about stand-up. I was like, dude, I'll just get an Uber. He goes, no, man, I'll take you. And then he just didn't talk to me the whole ride. The reason I brought that up, because it reminded me of the Chris Rock thing that I said about going on the cruise ship. I was ready to get into an argument with my agent over it. Because I was in my head thinking, oh, what if they try complain about my performance? And my argument back to my agent that I already had stocked in my head was I was like, all right, have them do the show again, but book a different comedian, but have it be the same setting. I'll sit in the back of the room. If that comedian does even a little better than I did, I'll give all my money back. I'll double it. That's actually going to be my argument. Not only will I get the check back, I'll add another $2,000 onto it. I want to see someone succeed in that dog shit situation. But you ever have an argument ready, but then the person never starts? Yeah. You're already ammunition ready to just punch into an email, but I never heard any negative comments. The check cleared, and I flew on to the Bay Area.
It's funny. I had the whole reason that I started this podcast. There was the corporate gig that I did had a similar beginning to it, where right before they brought me up, there was a whole like sincere, lots of tears about what was going on. People were crying, standing ovations, and then there was comedy, and it was just like, yep, this is not good. There's no way I can follow this. But
here's a little trick, for you, and then if there's any other comedians watching this, this is what I've been doing with corporate gigs. If they ask me to do one, I ask for a lot of money, like more money than I think they're going to say yes to. And I mean, if they say yes, then great. Then you're at least getting paid a lot of money to go bomb for an hour. But usually what they do is they'll go, oh, that's a little bit out of my price range. And I'm like, well, what's your guys' budget? And then a lot of times there'll be half of that big number that I throw out there. And I go, okay, well, I can do it for that, but maybe we can just do a 30-minute show instead of 60. And then they go, okay, that's a great idea. So now I'm getting paid what I would have accepted to do an hour for a good show. But now I'm getting that amount of money, but I only have to do 30 minutes. Like, there's such a big difference between bombing for 30 minutes or bombing for 60.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like even bombing for 45, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But bombing for 60 feels like an eternity, all right?
No, absolutely.
You can shimmy your way through 30 minutes. I could do 30 minutes in my sleep, and it could be okay. Like, it might bomb, but it won't be the absolute worst time in my entire life. And so that's what I've been doing. And I've booked like 3 corporate or private events where I shot high, and then they ended up giving me the money that I wanted, but I only had to do 30 minutes. And all 3 of those situations, I guess one of them sucked, but the other 2 were so fun. I ended up doing like 45, 50 minutes anyway, because I was having a good time.
No, that's great. And that's a really good trick. That's really good advice to do that. Cause even that's something I do. With a lot of corporate gigs, I've kind of been quoting them high, especially if it's a gig I don't want to do. I'm like, well, I'll put a bid in it, and just put a huge number that's ridiculous, and then I never hear from them again. But doing that where like if they come back at you with a less number, to just offer to do less time for that money, that's really smart.
Yeah, and then because I think one of them was a pet auction that I had to do. Auction? No, it was a fundraiser for like an ASPCA.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute, auction?
Not a pet auction. The opposite of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they
like a fundraising auction. I gotcha. I was like, what? Wait, oh, yeah.
They wanted me to do an hour, but they had, but I asked for a lot of money, and then I was like, well, I can do a half hour. And then it was one of those where it was a bad show, but I only had to be bad for a half hour, and it wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
If it was 60 minutes, I would have really cried. But it was just 30 minutes of like me having to pepper in crowd work material. And so 30 minutes was up, and that went by really fast.
Yeah. Now, do you still have representation? You said your old college agent, and I know the reason I asked this is because you do a lot of your own independent booking and touring, and you've been doing, where you'll rent a theater or something in an area and sell your own tickets and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's more what I'm trying to move into. But yeah, I still have a college agent. I just have a new one. That story was with an old college agent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with Chuck Johnson over at Summit. He has the best college agency in the country. I've been trying to get with him for years, and he's been repping me for the last 2 years. He's gotten me some really good college and private gigs, like just fundraising stuff like that. I also have a cruise ship agent, which hopefully I never have to go back on. He's a really nice guy. I just hate performing on cruise ships.
Yeah, a lot of comics do. I mean, it's kind of like you get there's like, when it comes to cruise ships, there isn't really an in-between. Comics either really like it a lot or they hate it. Like it's one end or the other. There's no, well, they're, in the middle.
The ones that really like it are old.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the only place they perform for the most part. Like, I did this thing where I try to compromise because I hate doing it, but it's last 2 years, I haven't needed the cruise ship money, but it's my safety net. I was raised by a really stringent mom who was very good with money and is like, you need your safety net. So I only need to book 8 weeks of cruise ships a year for the minimum amount of money I need to live, like to not be homeless, cover all my bills and blah, 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 and eat. And so that's the only amount that I book per year. Like they offer me like about 15 to 20 weeks a year. And I only take 8, and then I'll also cancel some. So I really want to cut it down to, this year my goal was to cut it down to like 4 or 5. And next year, hopefully not do any. But I don't know, it's like my backup. In case this is as good as it gets for me, and one day I'm just like some old guy, then fine, I'll go work on the cruise ships, because what else am I supposed to do? I have no job history for the last few years. I can't just go get a job. So, so it's my backup plan, but I don't like them. If there is one good thing about performing on cruise ships is if you have a joke work there, it pretty much means that you can do it about anywhere.
Yeah.
You can do it anywhere in the country. You might have to dust it up a little bit to do it on an alt show in front of cool young kids. But for the most part, if it works on a cruise ship, you can do it in LA, you can do it in New York, and you might be able to do it in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Now, you did one of the earliest dry bar comedy specials when they were still doing hours, and it did really good. I feel like, do you feel like that's what really helped kind of excel you? I mean, you did really good at NACA too. I know that helped, but the fact that
dying out. So I did to answer your question, absolutely. The dry bar is the only reason I can sell any tickets. They're the only reason I can sell a ticket is because of the dry bar. But yeah, and it was one of those things, like anything good that's happened for me in my career I didn't expect anything from. Like, before Dry Bar Comedy, it was winning the Seattle Comedy Competition, which the only reason I even did the competition is because Kurt Swan recommended that I do. And then I went, and then I got like an agent out of it. I got some stuff out of it. I got a lot of bookings. I was able to like bump myself up to headliner because of it. But I didn't expect anything from it. Same with Dry Bar. A comic reached out to me about it, and they're like, hey, they'll pay you X amount of dollars to film, and there's back end money. I wouldn't hold my breath. But it's whatever. It's X amount. Go do it. They'll fly you out. They'll pay you, and you're only there one night. And so I went out and did it. It went really well, and then the cat joke clip went viral. And that's what let me sell tickets. And then the back end money ended up being real. And they've sent me the biggest checks I've ever seen in my life in like quarterly installments. So it turned out to be really good. I mean, the problem is not all comics are getting paid, because it depends on how well it does.
Oh yeah, that part I know, but it was more of how you use, because I talk about that on here off and on about how using certain opportunities, like comics only think about the right here, right now. They don't think about necessarily the future, where, like you get a situation like that where you get a dry bar comedy special and you go into it thinking, well, this is cool. I get the special, I get some money, and then that's all they think about. It's the here and now. They don't think about what can it do for the future and how can that help me? Where you're an example of how, as being your friend, I've seen your journey or whatever, since that, you can go around the country now and you're doing shows at theaters, and you're not working necessarily for other people. You're doing it for yourself. You get to cut out a lot of the middlemen and stuff, which I feel like is a really good thing to have that.
I think it's the best thing. I think like the comic I look up to the most as far as like a career path that I would really enjoy is a Doug Stanhope.
Yep.
Who, I'd be very lucky if I ever had the kind of fan base he does. But even if I just had like a quarter of that fan base, I love the independence of it. He lives in a small town. Maybe I wouldn't live in Bisbee. I would still need to live in a city where I can go up every night, because stand-up is very important to me. But the independence of it all, of cutting out the middleman and not working at clubs. I'll be honest with you, putting on these shows myself, like it makes me not want to work at clubs at all. Not just because the money's better, but because there's no late shows unless you want to add a late show, unless it sells that well. There's no check drop. You don't have to worry about the opening acts that the club books. You can just hire a local comic to do 10 minutes before you, and then you do an hour, and then you meet everybody, and everyone's there to see you. Like no one stumbled in. They bought tickets to see you. The club didn't give out free tickets, and they're just like, who is this guy? No one's like, for the most part, nobody's going to heckle because they paid to see you specifically, so they don't want to ruin the show. It's just the energy of it is so much better. And I don't like doing late shows, and I don't like the check drop. And it's really, I mean, I still work clubs, but my goal is to move in the next few years to be all the way independent. Maybe just work at the clubs I really love performing at, but to have most of my income and most of my live dates be self-produced.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for, comics that want to try to like pursue that career path as far as comedy goes? What would you?
So the one thing I want to make clear is the only reason I'm able to is because of the following that I got from Dry Bar. So if you're like, had I tried this before without the fan base, I don't know how we could make that happen. I mean, what I do, the advertisement for it is pretty low. I usually just make a Facebook event, throw $100 at it, and make sure it's like to the specific town. These are your interests: comedy, cats, clean, whatever, and then it works. Some towns easier than others, of course. They're not all going to sell the same in all the places. But the only advice I would give is build on that, because Dry Bar, when they post your clip, if it gets 10 million views, they're not going to link your social media to it. Mm-hmm. You have to be in the comments and go, hey, if you like me, like my page. And I was one of the people that kind of complained about that or brought that to their attention. I'm like, hey, can you tag my Facebook page? So then they did on a couple of clips, and then I got a bunch of likes out of it. And then that built up my Instagram and my Facebook and my YouTube subscribers. And I'm able to sell tickets off of that. But as far as how to get the following, I don't know. Because that's anybody's guess, really, these days. But once you get the opportunity, it's how you take advantage of it. And there's a lot of comics doing that. I mean, like Steve Hofstadter's doing it. Another Dry Bar comic is Andrew Rivers, who's doing a lot of his own independent shows, and he's trying out a lot. He has a lot of theories of what works, what doesn't. Dustin Nickerson, who he hasn't done a Dry Bar, but he has a really good following because he's open for some really big acts. He's starting to go the independent route. And honestly, when all this is over, there's been numerous articles saying that all the theater acts and all the arena acts are going to have to go back to clubs because they're not going to allow mass gatherings. So the clubs are going to be out for guys like me and people even above me, and definitely everyone below me. It's going to be out for us working them on the weekends. So if you have any kind of ability to sell tickets, it's going to be through the independent venues anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because really, with that, with that happening, everybody's got to take a step or two back their level. Like somebody like you who headlines, you're right. With these A-list headliners coming to clubs, that bumps you down to feature. You're more of a feature act then, or a host.
But a lot of those guys are bringing their own openers anyway. Yep. Features not even. I'm out. I'm just out.
Yeah. I'm trying to look positive. I'm trying to be positive about it. God damn it. But the reality is, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would be able to make a living as a stand-up comic if I was just an every weekend club headliner. Like going every weekend, 50 weeks a year, going to a club that pays you like the $1,200 to $1,500 to headline a week. I mean, maybe if you're living in a different part of the country, but that just doesn't work in San Diego. I live in a studio.
No, not there. You got to be out where I'm at to make that happen. It's a lot cheaper to live where I'm living.
Right. I mean, if that's your plan and you want to be a headliner across the country getting the flat rate, not the door deals. You got to live somewhere else, like Vegas or somewhere where it's super cheap if you can put up with living in Vegas. But yeah, it's hard to pull off in New York or LA or San Diego or the big cities where it's expensive. But you can do that. I think the places I made most of where I make a living doing stand up before I was able to sell tickets was clubs. It was colleges and cruise ships. That's because those pay, cruise ship will pay you 3 times what a club base pay would be for a week. So it's actually a livable income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. There's all kinds of different little factors that go into it and things that a lot of people don't think about, especially in entertainment. They just think, oh, you got to go do what you love every night and you're making it big, you know? It's like, no, there's a lot.
But I do get to, I used to get to do what I love. Now I don't, I just sit, but,
well, we all kind of do that right now.
But yeah, putting on your own shows is a new level of stress. Now you care about ticket sales.
Yeah.
I remember I did a show in Oakland back in November or October, and the Monday before the show, I think the show was on a Sunday, we'd only sold 50 tickets, and I was hoping to, be at least in 100 because that's how big the venue was. I wanted to sell it out. And we ended up selling it. We ended up selling over 110 tickets or something. But Oakland, everyone was late. They only bought 50 pre-sale. I think even a couple days before the show, we were only at 60. It's like a bunch of people bought their tickets the day before and the day of. 50 extra people came, and you're like, oh, okay, you just all waited. Thanks for making me sweat it out,
Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot. As somebody that does a lot of independent producing, pre-sales always seem to lack, and it's always the day of or the day before, and then you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I hate that feeling because I would I've done a couple where we sell out a couple weeks before the show, and you're like, just give me that. I did last October. I did New York, where I had such a hard time finding a venue that I did it in a lady's basement, and it only had 50 seats. And it actually took a lot of effort to sell 50 tickets, and because New York City, there's too many options. Yeah. And but then we did Boston the next night, and the Boston was 110 seats, and we sold that out a week or 10 days before the event. So it just depends on the market. Each market's different, and then that added stress comes in on it where you're like, is this going to work, or am I about to go up in front of 20 people in a lady's basement?
Was it worth flying to New York to do this? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, you have to find out once you get there. Yeah, at the end of the day, it was very much worth it. The New York thing made up for it, or the Boston show definitely made up for it. And New York turned out to be fine, and it was actually a lot of fun. So that part was good.
That's awesome. Do you have a venue that you've performed at that's your favorite venue?
I have a few. My favorite club that I performed at, I don't even work there anymore. The Seattle, the Comedy Underground in Pioneer Square in Seattle, Washington. It's a mismanaged club. The owner doesn't care about it, and the staff, they're good people. There's always turnover on the staff, but it's just not a well-run club. But the stage is perfect. It's a basement club, brick backdrop with low stage, low ceiling. You're in the pocket. There's a good energy in the room. That's my favorite stage as far as a club goes, even though I don't work it anymore. Independent venues, I really liked. What was that place in Pittsburgh? I did this one in Pittsburgh. I think it's called the Unplanned Comedy Theater. It's an attic above a brewery, and it seats I think we sat over 100. And when we packed that thing in this weird venue in a weird location in a weird part of Pittsburgh, the energy in there was just beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Do you have because I like to try to end on a positive thing because I always get into the bad part about comedy with bombing and stuff. But do you have what's the gig that you've done so far that you're one of your favorite gigs that you've done so far?
I don't know. Yeah, we always talk about the negatives, don't we?
I know. Yeah, we do a lot. Yeah, that's why I like to try to flip it and let's go out positive.
There's a lot of, I guess I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot of shows that I like doing. Last one that I really enjoyed, Theo Von came down a couple months ago to shoot, record his hour, because I guess he was in negotiations with Netflix about it. I don't know, something. Mm-hmm. And the day of, a fellow comic was like, "Hey, Theo needs someone to open for him. Do you mind doing it?" And I was like, "I'd love to." And it was over at the La Jolla Comedy Store, which is one of my favorite stages to perform in. Sold out. And I had the new girl that I was dating. She came out and she got to watch me do 20 minutes in front of a sold out crowd, and it went really well. And I felt like $1 million afterwards. And it's also cool when you do well and no one's there to see you, because the expectations are down here.
Yeah.
They have zero expectations. They're here to see the guy coming after you. So if you're even remotely funny, they'll be happy. But then if you actually have a really good set, they'll be like, "Well, hot shit, who is that guy?" And so it was one of those sets. And those are the ones that keep you up at night, Mm-hmm. Like in a good way, where you can't fall asleep because you had a good set, you tried a couple new things and it worked, and then your brain's on fire going, "Oh, maybe we can take it here, maybe we can do this, change this, I don't know." Your brain it's just on fire, you can't turn it off. And those are the sets that, I don't know, I always think fondly of. Comedy is like any job that you enjoy. There are bad times, but if the good didn't outweigh the bad, people would quit. And by the way, if the bad outweighs the good and you're still doing it, you're crazy.
Yeah, this is true. However, I would say sometimes the bad, it contributes to the good. I had, my car broke down one time. That was a bad experience, but it was still a fun experience because that was with you. Remember, we broke down after we filmed at Pachanga. My car took a shit.
Yeah. Here's a little note to everyone. Do not let Dan drive. I just remember turning to you going, "You're doing 100 miles an hour." And you're like, "Whoa, I'm sorry." And then your car, a bunch of warnings came on the dash. And I'm like, "Dude, you should pull over." And you're like, "What's happening?" And I'm like, "You should pull over." And then your car died. And you're like, "I'm going to pull over." I'm like, "That's a good idea."
Oh, the times.
Yeah. I just remember us sitting on the freeway, on the shoulder, and I'm just, because I was still working at the time, so I had to go to work early the next morning, and I'm like, "We're never getting home. It's going to take hours to get home, and then I got to wake up in the morning and go to work." And I'm just sitting there, and then you look under the hood, and I'm just defeated. I work at a mechanic shop, but I don't know anything about cars. I work in the office, so I'm just sitting there, and then you come in and you go, "What are we going to do?" and I'm like, "I don't know, man. You call a tow truck or call AAA." And you're like, "I don't have AAA." And I went, "Damn it." And I pulled out my phone. And because at the time I had an old car, so I had the AAA gold package where they'll give you 100 miles of towing a year or whatever. Yep. And then we got it towed to my shop. Yep. And I got a ride home we rode home because I had my car at my mom's house, and then we drove back to I don't know, whatever it was.
Yeah, something like that. Yep. And then I had to pay you back the $40 because you had to pay the $40 for the tow.
Oh yeah. I think I tipped the guy or whatever because it was whatever. Yeah. And then I showed up to work the next day, and my redneck boss, who's since passed away, rest his soul.
Oh.
Yeah, he goes, "What's that hunker?" He has a cigarette. He goes, "What's this hunker shit Volvo doing out in the back?" And I go, "That's my buddy's car. It broke down." I was wondering if we could take a look at it. And he goes, "Man, I guess so."
Oh, too funny. I actually ended up getting the car fixed, and then I had it for a couple of years after that, too.
Oh, good.
It lasted me quite a while.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah. Well, what was the problem with it? You guys had to get a new motor for it or something?
I had to put a new motor in it. Yep. The head gaskets went out and just destroyed everything. That's what it ended up being.
Oh, yeah. So. That'll be that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Well, we'll get wrapped up. I like to do a fun thing where it's called this pick a number, and you're going to pick a number, and then there's a corresponding question with the number. So it's pick a number between 1 and 20.
12.
12. All right. Best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Like in life?
Yeah, or I guess, yeah. It can be whatever you want.
You know what? One of my favorite things when Conan O'Brien had his last night of The Tonight Show, because Leno was taking it back, and he gave this speech, which it was really popular at the time, but I think it's been kind of forgotten over the years, where he said, my least favorite thing is criticism, like people that are critical of each other and their work. And he was saying, he's like, I'm not that special, but I try hard and I'm nice. And he goes, you'll be surprised how far you can get in life and whatever you're trying to do if you just work hard and you're nice to be around. And I think that's probably the best advice for life and whatever you try to pursue. You know, I know we live in a time where it's very popular to bury somebody and be critical and be awful. You know, those get a lot of retweets and hearts for whatever reason. But in reality, because Twitter isn't reality, in reality, being nice and just working hard and trying passionately at what you're trying to do is the best way to go. So that's I think the best advice that I've heard. It wasn't told to me personally. I watched it on a YouTube video. I remember watching it going, I hope a lot of people listen to that.
Absolutely. Where can people find you and your comedy? You've got 5 or 6 comedy albums out now. At least that's what it seems like.
Yeah. Well, the new one that you can watch on YouTube is called Modern Male. It's you just type in my name and Modern Male and it will come right up. And then there's the Dry Bar 1 Cat Jokes, which is also on YouTube. And there's another album, Uncle McFat, on Spotify, 10,000 Pesos, also on Spotify. And also the Modern Male, the audio version, is going to be released by 800 Pound Gorilla. I think we talked about July 7th, I think, is the worldwide release. So you can wait until then and listen to it on Spotify if you want.
Oh, absolutely. That's great. And then ZoltanComedy.com. Is that the website?
Yeah, Zoltan Comedy for everything. If you're trying to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, or my website, or email me, it's all Zoltan Comedy.
All right. Thanks, Zoltan.
Thanks for having me, bud.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitz Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week, and remember, stay safe so you can live to love.